Welcome to Sound Policy, a podcast from FM where we share the latest insights on what it takes to protect today's businesses. We have a special episode for you today. We are recording this at RISKWORLD 2026 in Philadelphia, the annual gathering of global risk professionals. And I'm delighted today we have one of those professionals joining our show today to talk about her work. Staci Smith is the Vice President of Risk Management at Utz, an iconic company based right here in Pennsylvania, making salty snacks that Americans love. Staci, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited about the opportunity.
So, Vice President of Risk Management at Utz, potato chips, pretzels, cheese balls. That sounds like a really cool job.
It is an awesome job. It is a very exciting and it's a great opportunity. I mean, being a risk manager at any organization, you deal with similar challenges, whether it's keeping people safe, whether it's the insurance side, whether it's enterprise risk management, but really, I mean, the role is, it's really exciting to be part of an iconic company like Utz with the product that we have, just the brand loyalty that we have. You know, we have many household names that you guys may know, whether it's Utz brand, some of our Zapp's, Border Canyon on the border. There are a lot of names beside our flagship Utz products, but we're in a lot of households across the United States, so we have to make sure that we live up to that reputation. Our
viewers and listeners are going to be very hungry. I hope they have a snack on hand for this episode.
Hopefully it's a nut snack, you have to be prepared for that.
Of course. We're on brand here.
Exactly.
How did you get into this line of work?
So I'm one of the ones that did not study risk management. Growing up in Western Pennsylvania, risk management was something that I never even knew was a career. So my background is went to school, majored in biology, planned on going to medical school, graduated with my undergraduate degree, and decided that medical school was not the right path for me. So worked in real estate a little bit, and then my now husband got a job in Harrisburg. We relocated, and I got a job at a life insurance brokerage firm. So again, didn't really know a whole lot about insurance at that point. Worked there for 10 years, and then an opportunity came up at a large Fortune 500 confection company located in central Pennsylvania, and was able to start risk management there. So started on the ground up, started working in claims, worked my way up to being their global risk manager. Was there for about 8.5 years, and then transitioned to Utz Brands, where I've been there almost 3 years now, establishing and overseeing the risk management department. So it's been a fun journey. So again, not that educational background where I didn't go to school for risk management, but I kind of stumbled into it, realizing that's my passion, and that's what excites me every day.
I feel like that's a common story, whether it's insurance or risk management. Stumbled into it might be the most common verb that people describe, to stumble into insurance and then or risk management as well, and end up really enjoying it. It's certainly my story. I know, I'm sure our audience is probably already pretty well immersed in this, but how would you describe risk management to somebody who's not familiar with it and you know, when you stumble into it and then end up staying in there for a long time? Why is that? Why do people love it so much?
Absolutely. I mean, I think risk management gives you a really good perspective of the organization, where a lot of people think you're there to say no to them, you're there to, completely eliminate risk or completely mitigate risk, and that's really kind of the opposite of what we do. What we do is, yes, you want to mitigate risk, but you want to be comfortable with risk and understand the risk. Understand what your opportunities are to mitigate it, but also understand that you're not going to mitigate everything, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes risk is positive. You can have a positive opportunity that might be risky, but really helping educate the business to understand, when can you take advantage of a situation, when is the situation going to be beneficial to you, or what other scenarios do you need to maybe think about it differently and do something to mitigate that risk, whether it's purchase insurance, which is one way, or, adding sprinklers to one of your buildings, which obviously with FM is something that's a preferred way to mitigate risk. But
we have a sprinkler display right over your shoulder. There's an enormous display of sprinklers. So,
but, it's really just educating the business, I think, is really what is helpful with that. And it's not just the operations team. I mean, it's going down to procurement. I think it's really helpful too. Just teaching them, the importance of the risk evaluation, importance of contract, reviewing the contract and that contract certainty, and also the importance of having appropriate risk options and insurance options in the contract.
Automation, obviously a big opportunity. We hear a lot about the opportunities of automation. How are you thinking about the risks that automation might bring? How are you working through those issues?
I mean, the risks of automation is really looking at kind of the cyber component of it also, of if there's a cyber incident, the more automated you are, the more opportunities for impact there is. Where when you have a very manual process, you're relying on humans, so it's easier to kind of have a backup process. So when it comes to automation, that is a potential risk where, there's a cyber, element into that. And also there's the technology glitches. There's a lot more maintenance than having manual processes. So, I mean, there is some risks, but I think that's one of the areas where the opportunities and the cost savings really kind of outweigh some of those other risks that aren't come into play.
How have you worked through those cyber issues?
I mean, with that, a lot of it comes down to the pre-planning that we do with our cyber team. So our cyber team, we have worked on, crisis management, developing what plan are we going to be having. So what are we going to do in the event of an incident, making sure our policies and procedures are in place, and then also doing tabletop exercises to exercise those. So we've done various tabletop exercises, with the executives, with, the board, with our core IT team. And we had actually done one recently, partnered with FM. They were able to come in with their cyber expertise and help us develop one that was kind of like a hide and seek type game that our IT team got to do. So it was something that was really out of the box, but it was a great partnership and a great way for our team to learn and really practice kind of a real life scenario in a safe situation. But again, with great collaboration. So
people walking through their grocery store or their convenience store might see a bag of chips and not realize maybe more high tech and more AI and automation focus than they might expect. Are people surprised by that when you're talking about them?
I think people really are. I mean, people who are in the manufacturing industry understand how important, the cyber risk is and the AI risk is. It's not like we're in healthcare where there's a lot of PI or PHI, but it's the business interruption aspect of it. So that's something that I think a lot of people, don't take into consideration when they're considering our risk. But, I think that's out there for any type of business. Every business has a cyber risk. And any business who's using AI either has the risk for using it or, they have the risk of if they don't use it, then they're missing out on the potential upside and the potential benefits of AI. So, AI is here. AI is, if you need to use it. If not, you're going to be left behind. So it's really just understanding how to use it, how to utilize it safely, how to utilize it with guardrails, and just, how to utilize it effectively to help your organization.
So you've been involved in the food manufacturing business for some time now. What goes into getting product on the shelf?
There's a lot that goes into getting a product on the shelf, and a lot of it is supply chain related. I mean, manufacturing products, sometimes they're more simple and complex depending on which food company that you're working for at the time. But really the supply chain leading up to it is something that's really important and something that, can be extremely complicated. It really depends on what your components are, but a lot of whether the ingredients, whether you're sourcing them, your core ingredients, they could be sourced domestically or internationally, but then you have to look at packaging. You have to look at your packaging. Where do the dyes come from? They may come from a completely different region than your packaging comes from, or the market where you're actually purchasing your packaging. So really kind of peeling back that onion, those layers, and going back to tracing your components, who are their suppliers, really back to the source, really helps you understand your supply chain and make it more efficient and more resilient. Because if there's something happening in a region and that region is common for inks or that region is common for spices that go into your final finished product, yes, that's not directly impacting you where you are, but eventually as you work down the supply chain to those primary sources, that will ultimately make it to you. So really identifying that's really, part of the challenge. And then obviously you manufacture your product, you go through that, you need to make sure your manufacturing equipment is in good condition, you need to make sure you're doing the preventative maintenance and you have those processes in place to keep your operations running. And then it's the logistics to get the product on the store shelf. So again, that involves a lot of transportation risk, that involves a lot of warehousing, that involves a lot of people risk of just making sure that whole process works efficiently. So it is a very involved product to get, between the ingredient and getting a product on the shelf. For most people, I think it's really mind-blowing to see how many steps and components, because even the sourcing of ingredients, that involves procurement. You're involving manufacturing team, you're involving the finance team to calculate the cost of it. So it really involves a lot more individuals have a hand in that process than one would typically think.
What do people most understand about the role of a risk manager?
I think what is most misunderstood is that people think you're there to say no. You're there to ruin the fun. You're there to say no to everything and tell them what they're not allowed to do, which I view it as completely the opposite. I view it as I'm here to partner with you, and I'm here to partner to give you a way to empower you to say yes, but to empower you to say yes, understanding what the risk associated with that activity is. So really providing that education on teaching you, this is what it means, this is what the risk means, this is what we could do from a mitigation perspective, whether it's actual controls in place, whether it's contract language, whether it's them having our partner maintain insurance. But here's the control, here's the risk, here are the controls that we have, this is the amount that's risk that's left. Are we comfortable with that based on the potential upside of the agreement? So really educating the business, empowering the business to be able to comfortably say yes, make that informed decision, I think is really the key. I mean, it's really my goal to be a partner for the organization and to, I want them to come to me when they have problems, when they have challenges, and we can work through it together. So that's how I see my role. I mean, just as a funny story, everyone, again, thinks we say no. The only thing I've ever said no to was one of my teams wanted to do a new employee onboarding event with a sales team who were most of them were freshly out of college at a bar, and it was bull riding.
Bull riding.
Like, that was the one hard line no that I have ever given in my career. Anything else, there's typically a workaround or your ways to say yes to it and get comfortable with that risk.
Yeah, we will not ask you to do any mechanical bull riding on this show. We're just talking about insurance and risk management. We're fine. How do you get buy-in for the work that you're doing? How do you make sure get that buy-in for the things that you want to do?
Yeah, I think getting buy-in is something that can be challenging, but a lot of that comes to, understanding the problem and then framing it and understanding who you're talking to. So really looking at what that core risk is, making sure you have the right business partners engaged, and framing it to how it's going to impact them or they're part of the organization. Because obviously a risk can impact various parts of the organization differently, but keeping your message focused, keeping your message realistic and applicable based on that person's scope, and just being transparent with them, saying, listen, this is the risk, let's throw it out there, let's have a candid conversation. This is the risk, this is what happens if we do nothing, this is what we could do, and have that open conversation of, is the cost, worth the mitigation, the risk reduction.
Unless it's bull riding.
Unless it's bull riding. That, take out the bull riding, everything else is fine, but that was kind of the key component of the event.
Because the whole point of bull riding is eventually you are thrown off the ball.
You are thrown off.
Like that is the inevitable
exactly.
endpoint of bull riding, is to be ejected from.
And that with alcohol and recent 21-year-olds and new hires, that combination of things.
That's a hard no.
That was a hard no.
Besides that, is there anything else you could point to that you're proud of to reduce risk? Something you've done that you're most proud of? Of
course, I would say two examples come to mind. One of them is establishing enterprise risk management. So I know some organizations don't necessarily have a mature way of looking at risks, where things come up and they handle it, but they're not proactively seeking what are the risks within the organization and how do they partner together with other risks or other factors of the organization. So I think establishing the ERM program was really helpful in getting the business to think about risk differently, to proactively think, okay, what impact, this is a risk in my part of the world, my part of the organization. Where else could it be impacted by this? If it's a supply chain risk, could it also impact finance? Could it also impact HR? Thinking of that cross-functionally and then setting up cross-functional working groups to address those risks. That way, you're not looking at it in a silo. You're not doing something to mitigate your risk, but it's increasing the risk in another part of the organization. That's the last thing you want to do. So I think just having that higher level organizational view of risk, has been very helpful. And also, too, I would say, bringing in FM as a partner and using that partner relationship has been helpful also, just due to, the identification of risk, helping us mitigate risk. I mean, anybody who's familiar with FM knows, what they're very good at. The engineering is, the best in class. So that is something else I'm really proud of, being able to bring that to my organization, have that partnership, and that is really helping us kind of reach that next level with being resilient, so we're able to continue to make the products, that everybody knows and loves.
So at RISKWORLD, we're surrounded by professionals who have faced a lot of change, a lot of disruption in the past few years. What do you think has fundamentally changed about the risk landscape, especially as it relates to food manufacturing?
Yeah, I would say what's really changed over the last few years is that disruption is the new baseline. Disruptions are going to happen. They're going to happen consistently. Leadership understands this. So what's really critical is to have, your team be able to raise their hand and call out when they see something that's going a little astray. I mean, that's critical because if you see something, you can react to it, you can go do research, it gives you a little bit more time to prepare. So those are the teams that are going to be, more successful when that incident actually happens or when that disruption actually occurs. But this is really predicated on the senior leadership and the company culture. Because if you're in a culture where, raising your hand saying this isn't quite right, you're blamed. You don't want to be assigning blame to people. You don't want to be ridiculing them or saying, well, why didn't you get this right in the first place? Mm-hmm. You really have to be able to have an organization that welcomes someone being like, listen, I'm raising my hand. I think we need to look into this. having that, I think, is really important and really is a differentiator within organizations and how they're handling risk and how they're handling disruption.
What is the big risk that keeps Staci Smith up at night?
So this is a question that everybody asks and that I really, really do not like. So I'm just giving you, so my perspective is I've been very fortunate in my career to always work in food manufacturing. So we're not saving lives, we're not really changing the world. So maybe if I was in a different industry that was life-saving,
Sure.
I may have a different opinion on this question.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I don't see risk as a bad thing. I mean, risk can be a good thing, it can be opportunities, and you have to learn how to manage risk and how to deal with risk and be comfortable with risk. So I would say, if I panicked about everything, I wouldn't be good at my job. So from that perspective, that's why I don't like the question. But I would counter that with saying, I think if you're going to be kind of nervous or question something, it would be the unknown risk. Because you know the risks within your organization, you know what the post possibilities are, but it's that something that comes out of left field that you've never thought of before, never considered before, you don't have a plan in place. I think that for most organization is what can be most impactful because, again, you haven't put any thought behind it. But a lot of the risks that most organizations have, they have at least some planning around it, some thought and some understanding. So if I had to answer the question, it would be the risk that you don't know about would be the risk that you would be most worried about.
And obviously, we can't say what those in the future are, but are there past examples where something emerged that you weren't expecting and had challenges with?
Yeah, I would say, there have been some supply chain risks that occurred, and part of that was, not necessarily understanding the supply chain as well as we could have, where had a provider in the past who, had a flood, didn't know their location was in a flood zone, didn't realize they were the single supplier of one product. We had a different address for them. They had multiple facilities. This one core product could only be made at this one location due to the equipment that they had. So again, that was kind of an unknown risk. We thought that we had multiple locations that could make this one product or this one component, and it wasn't the case. So again, that surprise really was impactful to the organization. So again, something we never thought about, something we didn't know, that created more of a challenge than the risks that we had previously identified.
What are one or two emerging risks, things that we already do know about that maybe aren't getting enough attention?
I would say AI. I think AI is a risk, both, a positive and where there's a lot of benefit to it, but I think there's just so much unknown of how it's going to be utilized by, the hackers or whoever else within the organization. So I think there are a lot of opportunities with it, but I think from a risk perspective, that's one that, makes me a little bit nervous.
AI and chips. That's we didn't think we'd go there, but people might not realize that we're actually talking about odds.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about opportunity? You sort of alluded to this with AI, because there's also opportunities too.
Absolutely.
What do you think the future of food manufacturing looks like? What excites you about the future?
I think really AI and automation and being able to utilize data to make more informed decisions to help create supply chain efficiencies. I see that as a real benefit. So I see AI being involved more in kind of the data analytics and helping just to make sure we're making smarter, more efficient business decisions. It's instead of someone crunching numbers on a spreadsheet, all that math and all that work is being done behind the scenes, making sure, of course, that there is a human in the loop and a human helping make those decisions. But I think that computing power of AI is going to be integral. And also automation. I think automation is really going to be key to help, prevent employee injuries from the workers' comp side and also help with efficiency, help reduce costs. Then that enables us to upskill, current associates that the companies have of, instead of maybe a general labor position, if you automate a process, someone may be able to get promoted and be a supervisor or be, a production manager, things like that. So I think there are a lot of opportunities that are available. It'll just be interesting to see, how it comes along the next few years.
We will find out. We have to end on this question. It's very important to me personally. You work for Utz.
Yes, I do.
A great company based right here in Pennsylvania. What is your favorite Utz potato chip or just salty snack in general?
I would say I'm going to give you two. So
Okay.
One is the dirty sour cream and onion, just regular potato chip. And the other one is called the Big Cheesy.
Big Cheesy.
It's potato chip, and it has, the core cheese ball flavor on a potato chip. So it's something that's, relatively new, but it's very interesting. But I would suggest everyone go try it because it is definitely worth it.
Great. Thank you, Staci, for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Copyright 2026 Factory Mutual Insurance Company, all rights reserved. This podcast is for informational purposes only and aims to highlight potential hazards or conditions to help reduce property loss. FM makes no express or implied warranties and assumes no liability for the use of any information or products mentioned.